Well, good morning. Welcome, everyone, to the 2022 Defensible Space Assistance Grant Application Webinar. I'm Dave Farley, and I'll be walking you through the basics of this grant program and how to apply. Assisting today is Sarah Niss, our grant team and programs assistant, Becky DeForest, one of our staff grant specialists, and Amber Gardner, our clearinghouse manager. And for the rest of the California Fire Safe Council staff who is in this meeting, feel free to enter your name and title into the chat so that everyone knows you're here. And Amber, if you want to say a couple of words before we get started. No pressure. If you don't, that's fine too.
Sure thing. Good morning, everyone. Oop, let me go. There we go. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending today's webinar on our new Defensible Space Grant Program. We're thrilled to be able to present it to you, and Dave should give you all the information you need to apply and follow up for more information. We have a bunch of staff on the call as well. They are putting it in the chat, so those are also great connections for you if you have questions. And without further ado, take it away, Dave.
All right, let's roll. So we have a lot of attendees this morning, so make sure, just for little housekeeping purposes, make sure to keep your microphone muted, and to help save on bandwidth, if you want to turn off your cameras, that's fine too. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, just go ahead and pop them into the chat box. We'll do our best to collect all of your questions and address them either during or at the end of the presentation. And of course, this is not the end of the process. We're also available to answer questions throughout the application period. So if your question is not addressed today, always, please feel free to email me afterwards. All of our contact information will be in the presentation and on our website. And finally, as you probably just noticed, the presentation is being recorded and will be available on the website for viewing in the next week or so. There we go. So before we get too deep into it, let me just acknowledge that this grant program and publications are funded in full by CAL FIRE as part of the California Climate Investments Program under the terms of grant number 5GG 21100, and the opinions expressed herein are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of CAL FIRE. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk a little bit about the California Fire Safe Council and its history. We're going to give you an overview of the Defensible Space Grant Program, how to apply, what happens after you apply, and then give you some helpful resources that you can use during the application process, and we'll go over the Q&A at the end. So briefly, the California Fire Safe Council is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We are celebrating our 20th anniversary, and we were founded through a grassroots-driven movement for creating wildfire-ready and resilient communities. Since 2004, we've provided more than 1,200 grants, totaling over $124 million to organizations and agencies throughout California. So, just a little background on what we do. The Grants Clearinghouse is one of our services, and it's overseen by our grants team. And we partner with federal, state, and private agencies to provide funding opportunities to a variety of public and private wildfire mitigation groups working to address the issues of catastrophic wildfire in California. And some of our partner agencies include CAL FIRE, the U.S. Forest Service, NIFWIF, Cal OES, BLM, PG&E, and Southern California Edison. And then there's our programs and outreach team, which includes our regional coordinators and our communications team, and they provide programmatic and technical assistance to wrap our grantees and other organizations with additional layers of support to ensure that their projects are successful. And that includes everything from community and organizational capacity building, training and skill building through workshops, webinars, and events, sharing best and emerging practices, and amplifying success stories. And the map you see there is how we break California into 3 regions that are managed by our regional coordinators. And shown here are the grant team contacts for this particular grant program. I'll be your primary contact for any questions or assistance. So again, there's my email address if you need to reach out to me. And even though they're not listed here, let me just give a quick shout out to our other grant specialists, Julia Marsili and Nina Evans, who oversee our county coordinator program, and Morgan Galliano and Thomas Schumacher, who handle our federal grants and other special projects as needed. And shown here are the names and email addresses of our programs and outreach team, including our regional coordinators and our comms team. So if you have any need for technical support or advice, best practices, please feel free to reach out to them. All right, so now let's get into it. Let's start with an overview of the Defensible Space Grant Program. So in this program, we are funding countywide organizations to assist vulnerable populations with defensible space treatment on their property. And we're looking for organizations to develop innovative projects that increase the number of properties in compliance with defensible space standards by reducing barriers to participation. And by innovative projects, I'll touch on that later, so don't worry about that right now. And with vulnerable populations, we are specifically looking at low-income, disabled, senior, elderly, and disadvantaged in high and very high fire hazard severity zones. And when we say, because I've had some questions beforehand about this, when we say countywide organizations, we mean either organizations that operate on a countywide basis or a partnership between multiple organizations that currently have a narrow geographic sphere of influence, but when teamed up can cover a significant portion of their county. And the reason we're asking for this is because we anticipate making larger than usual grants for this program. So we'd like to see organizations that have the capacity to work on a county scale. So here are the particulars of this grant program. We have a total of $4 million to make subawards. The maximum grant that applicants can request is $500,000, and we are estimating that we'll make approximately 8 awards. So we're looking for applicants to think big and go big with their projects. The award period is 16 months long from September 1st, 2023 through the end of 2024. Grants will be awarded throughout California. Only one organization per county will receive a grant, and matching funds are not required, but if you choose to commit matching funds, you'll be required to track them and report them throughout the grant period. Eligibility is limited to local governments and agencies, tribal governments, fire safe councils with a 501c3 designation, other 501c3 nonprofits, and the following are not eligible: for-profit companies, individuals, and homeowners associations, or other associations unless they have a 501c3 designation. Now, that doesn't mean that if you are a nonprofit that is a 501c6 or a C7, or I'm not even sure what the other numbers are, but it doesn't mean you can't apply, but you'll need to have a fiscal sponsor that's an eligible organization apply on your behalf. And like I touched on earlier, the priority communities for this grant project are the vulnerable and underserved populations in high and very high fire hazard severity zones. So again, low income, disabled, senior and elderly, and disadvantaged. And you don't need to exclusively serve vulnerable populations, but they really should be the primary focus and the majority of the property owners that you serve. Now, if you have questions about where your county lies in terms of fire hazard severity or income levels, you can use the CAL FIRE mapping system. And there are two tabs that are of critical importance here. So the Reduce Wildfire Risk to Communities tab, which shows you the fire hazard severity zones. And the second is the Priority Populations tab, which will give you information on the low-income communities in your area. Now let's talk a little bit about eligible costs. Keep in mind, this list is not all-inclusive. It just happens to be the most common expenses that we see in our grant programs. So, hiring staff to manage the project, contracting with Defensible Space Fuels crews, public outreach and education events, technology, project supplies. And now this grant allows for equipment purchases. And equipment is defined as an item with a unit cost of greater than $5,000 and a useful lifespan of more than 1 year. So everything above that is equipment, everything below is considered supplies. And while fuels treatment equipment is allowable, we're capping the amount at $10,000 because we really want the focus of projects to be on defensible space, but we want to give applicants the flexibility to purchase equipment if it's needed. And if you decide to go that route and buy equipment, be sure to clearly explain in your budget narrative what you're buying and how it will be used in your project. And there are some specific instructions in the applicant handbook on our website regarding equipment purchases. So be sure to read them closely if you're considering equipment for your project. Of course, if we talk about eligible costs, probably need to talk about prohibited costs. And dovetailing on equipment purchases, so anything above $10,000 for equipment is not allowable. Purchases of equipment without demonstrating how it will be utilized. Installation, creation, upgrade, or maintenance of fire protection features or infrastructure, such as water tanks, not allowable. I've had a couple of questions on that, so no, we're not going to fund water tanks. Vehicles, I wish, but no. And I've had a couple of questions on this too. So tree removal from private property is not allowed unless it poses an imminent threat to public health and safety. Improvement of landscaping, including planting, is not allowed. We're not here to be landscapers, but one thing that we've seen on some other projects is our grantees will hire, say, a landscaping consultant to provide information and education to property owners about how to implement the new Zone 0 requirements, what kind of landscaping they can do around their home, give them some ideas, but not actually do the planting themselves. But it gives the homeowners, some ideas that they can go take on themselves. And then food and beverages not associated with a per diem, also not allowed. So here are some of the deliverables for the project. First and foremost, participate in our bi-monthly check-in meetings with California Fire Safe Council staff and the other D-Space grantees, just to see how everything's going, problem solve with each other, share best practices, etc. Track the number of properties and acres treated vulnerable populations served, and the number of outreach and education activities conducted. Of course, there'll be some programmatic and fiscal reports and Zoom grants, before and after photos, and GIS information for the properties treated. Again, these are the minimum. There could be some additional deliverables added later, because, honestly, sometimes we will sit around and think, yeah, it'd be nice if we tracked X. But when we do that, we're not going to make it burdensome on you. We're going to try and think of items and data that you already collect. So anyway, just keep that in mind. So before moving on to the next section, let's just pause and go over a few key dates. You are here, May 23rd, at the application technical webinar. The deadline is June 15th. Awards will be announced most likely in late July. And again, the award period is from September 1st through December 31st of next year. And just briefly, this chart here to give you an understanding of how the funds flow is that the funds originated with the state of California and CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE made a grant to us as the primary recipient and a pass-through agency. We are now going to make, through this process, subawards to eligible applicant organizations, and the beneficiaries will be the community residents and vulnerable populations served. And this chart gives you an overview of the grant's life cycle. So we are focusing mainly on the application phase today, but we'll touch briefly on pre-award and award phases in a little bit. So the application phase has two components: preparation and submission. Now, during the preparation phase, this is where you not only put together your project concept and your application, but you also prepare your organization to manage the grant. Some key things to do are attending a grant application webinar like this, reviewing the grant program requirements, the application process and the deadlines, evaluate your organization's capacity to receive the grant and properly implement the project. Set a schedule for yourself to ensure that you meet the deadlines. June 15th is coming up quick, don't want to miss it. And create a detailed project plan and budget with clearly defined tasks. So to apply for this grant or any other grant opportunity from the California Fire Safe Council, you need to create a Zoom Grants account. And you can do this by going to our webpage and clicking on the Apply for a Grant link. And when you scroll to the Zoom Grants login option, you'll see this screen here where you can preview the grant program and create a new account. Again, you must create an account to first begin the grant application. Now, after you've created your Zoom Grants account, there are two views available: your account profile and your applications. Be sure to complete your account profile before working on the application. And to start an application, you'll want to select from the Open Programs tab, where you will see the 22 CAL FIRE Defensible Space Program. Select the hyperlinked text and get started. And when you navigate to your My Account homepage, you will see something akin to this, where you will have access to all of your Zoom Grants applications, be they submitted, approved, declined, or archived. Now, once you've decided to create and open up your DSpace application, you are going to be presented with your grant dashboard. And on the dashboard, you're going to see 5 application tabs. And all 5 tabs must be completed by the deadline for this grant application. The summary tab provides an overview of your application and contact information. The application questions tab is where you will complete, well, the application questions. The budget tab is where you provide a breakdown of your budget and describe each line item in your budget narrative. Under the scope of work, you'll describe your project's work plan, including your activities, timeline, responsible parties for each activity, your expected outcomes, and an approximate budget for each activity. And finally, you'll submit your supporting documents under the Documents tab. Now, in the applicant handbook, you'll find a complete list of the supporting documents that are necessary. But just to give you an idea, it includes items like your nonprofit status letter, a board of directors roster, an insurance certificate, project maps, and so on. Just documents that help us review your project and assess your organization's capacity. Now, after you click the submit button, you're finished with your application, you click submit. This is your next natural question. So once the application period closes, we go into a review phase where we screen, the California Fire Safety Council will screen your applications for eligibility and completeness. All the ones that are eligible will be reviewed and scored by a review committee, just based on how well the application meets the grant program requirements, the degree to which the work plan and budget are realistic and achievable. And then in this phase, all the applicant organizations will undergo a capacity or a financial assessment to determine if you have adequate controls in place to manage the grant. And if, again, I encourage everyone to download the applicant handbook from our website, which includes the complete list of scoring criteria for this grant. So there are several steps that you can take to help you succeed. Now, attending this webinar is obviously a good first step. Like I just said, make sure to download the applicant handbook and planning tool from our Defensible Space grant webpage. And we'll have, if it's not in the chat already, we'll have a link to that in just a few slides. Make a schedule and get started as soon as possible. June 15th, which I find it very hard to believe is just like seriously around the corner. So set due dates to keep yourself on track with the deadline. Don't underestimate how much time it will take to prepare the application. Things always take longer than you think they will. And we recommend using, if you can, to use an outside proofreader or a reviewer to check your application for accuracy and ensure that it makes sense to someone who might not be completely familiar with your project. We encourage you to pay attention to all the little details between the narrative questions, your scope of work, and the budget. Make sure that they're all in alignment with each other. And finally, going back to the idea of innovative projects, we really want applicants to think new, different, and innovative with their project concepts. So, we're looking for organizations to take their DSpace efforts to the next level. And in the applicant handbook, we have several ideas to help jumpstart your creative thinking. I listed a few here, but this is by no means all-inclusive. Just think about how you can reduce the barriers for property owners to be involved with defensible space. I mean, it's easy to reach the homeowners that keep their property neat and clean and always do their maintenance work. We want to make it easier for those who aren't doing D-space to get into that lifestyle. And it could be everything from translating your defensible space information into multiple languages, or reviewing your website to make sure it's accessible to people with disabilities, or creating new partnerships with local defensible space inspectors to connect property owners that received a warning or are at risk of receiving a citation with your defensible space project. Don't limit yourself to what you already do. Start thinking about those ideas when you've said, wouldn't it be great if we could do X? So this grant opportunity is just a really great moment for bold ideas. Now, with all that said, if you have questions, we have answers, or we'll find them. So please don't hesitate to email us. And let's just take one more look at the key date, June 15th. Circle it, big, bold, red ink on your calendar. Don't miss it. And before we wrap this up, let's go over some helpful resources that you might find useful during the application period. First and foremost is our Defensible Space Grant webpage. You will find the applicant handbook, the application planning tool, and I should have mentioned this before, but the application planning tool is a Word document with all of the questions and tables that are in the Zoom Grants application. So if you find it useful to work offline, you can respond to all the questions in the Word document, and then when you are ready to apply in Zoom Grants, just simply cut and paste from the Word document into Zoom Grants. We'll have a frequently asked questions document coming soon. And again, this webinar is being recorded, and we will make that recording available for everyone as soon as we can. There's also on our website, the Virtual Learning Center, where you can find all of the California Fire Safe Council's latest resources, from articles, success stories, videos, home hardening and defensible space information, and more. Everything here is intended to support community awareness, preparedness, and resiliency. There's also the Mitigation Messenger, our quarterly newsletter with news and information from around the state. You can find past issues on our website. And there's also our events calendar. Be sure to check it out for educational and professional development activities throughout the state. If your organization has an upcoming event, feel free to add it by clicking on the Submit Your Event button. We'd love to help promote your activities. And finally, we also encourage you to join our mailing list. So make sure to add your email address to the box in the bottom right-hand corner of our website to stay up to date on everything happening at the California Fire Safe Council, newsletters, e-blasts, grant announcements, and more. And of course, while you're signing up for the mailing list, be sure to follow our social media accounts for current events, additional resources, and all of the cool things happening with our wildfire prevention friends and partners. All right, that's all I have. So at this point, I'd like to go back through the chat and recap some of the questions already asked and to catch anything that might still be pending. So just give me a moment while I get myself situated here. Okay, one moment. Okay, one moment. Yeah, I see this has already been answered. So would basic home hardening and retrofits be an eligible cost, say screening events? Well, that's really not the purpose. I think Amber covered this. That's not really the purpose of this grant. We do encourage applicants to include an element of home hardening education and outreach to provide information, but not actual retrofits or supplies like that. Can we connect this to a FEMA funding? Let me see if that's been answered.
I don't think that one has yet.
It has not, and I will need, let me make a note of that. That was fire safe, Sonoma, Roberta. Let me get back to you on that. I want to look into that. I don't want to just give a off the cuff answer. I sometimes tend to get myself in trouble like that. So let me do a little research.
And on that one, I'm not going to give you a yes or no on the CAL FIRE's requirements on whether you can use it for FEMA, but those of you who don't know me, I'm JC Hyde. I'm the new executive director here. In my previous life, I was the branch chief for hazard mitigation at Cal OES, administering the FEMA grants. And I would urge caution if you're going to use this for FEMA, just because the FEMA period of performances are much longer than this one is. And also it, as many of you who have applied for FEMA know, it generally takes a year or two to get approved, and you might run out of time here. So I'll let Dave get back to you as to whether or not it is allowed under this program. But even if it is a yes, technically, I would encourage caution for those reasons.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for jumping in there. That was probably going to be my response by email anyway, but appreciate it. Let me see, where else are we here?
So Dave, in the notes on the PowerPoint, the ones me and you can see, I'm actually tracking all the questions right
Okay.
below. Yeah, so I'm bolding the answers. So I think we're at, what about disabled veterans as a target demographic? And it looks like that one was answered by Becky.
Yeah, I think disabled veterans would be fantastic. That certainly falls within the current priority communities in this grant, because we're looking for, again, low income, disabled, senior, elderly, or disadvantaged, and disabled veterans. I do believe would fall under that. Oh, I like this one. We're looking to fund work on vacant properties. Can you talk about the scope allowed regarding that? So yeah, that's interesting. Working on vacant property. I think that was one of the suggestions or brainstorming ideas we put in the applicant handbook, is to create a partnership with your local code enforcement to try and reach out to either absentee property owners or property owners that just, there's vacant parcels, but they haven't cleared it. I think that's, to me, that sounds like a good idea, because, you know, there are a lot of neighborhoods that have vacant parcels, and, you know, if they're overgrown, they create a big risk themselves. So I would encourage that. Okay, hold on, let me see. Okay, one moment, let me process.
Yeah, it looks like Amber just answered the next one.
She did about the
So quick.
measurables. Yes,
Could I come off mute and expand on my question a little?
sure.
So we currently have a defensible space assistance program that I'm looking to evolve and change quite a bit. And currently we track acres treated by the general estimate and average. Is that approvable with this program, or are you looking for something more specific like drone measurements, or how strict is acres treated, and how do you expect grantees to get that metric, if you know?
So we are looking for, yeah, the acres treated is a new one that we were asked to measure, and understanding that every parcel is different. I would say as you're working on a property, just try to find out an estimate as to the size of the property by making, a basic measurement of length and width, if possible. I know, again, every parcel is different. It's not like in an urban environment where, you have parcels in a nice rectangle. But
Right.
just-
Also, like parcels, is it okay to get that data from the parcel size? Because you can grab that from like ArcGIS in my region. Or do you want like specifically the acres that we're actually going out there and modifying versus the acres that we're protecting as a whole? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And can you email me that question so that I can ponder it for a moment?
Yeah, of course. Thank you
Would that
so
be
much.
okay?
I've been pondering it for like 2 years now, so I would appreciate
Okay,
some
yeah.
help.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay, if you've had 2 years, I need more than 2 minutes.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah. Okay, let me see. Did these get answered? Let's see. Hold on, let me go back.
Let me see. Yeah, it looks like next one was, since funding will be available in September 2023 and end December 2024, is it for 2024 fire season only? And then of course, Amber went ahead and answered it. She's so quick.
She really is. Yeah, and we do understand that it's a short window, so as much as you can get done as possible.
And how many years envisioned to be handled? I mean, it's future years, and then selection criteria for grant award.
I don't see that question.
I believe it was right after it. Yeah. The way how it has it when you reply, it brings it down to the bottom of the chat. Hence why I'm trying to be on top of it for you, Dave. I'm trying. Okay. What are selections?
Yeah, the selection criteria, again, go to the website, download the applicant handbook, and all of the selection criteria are there. And then actually, as you read the selection criteria, it's probably going to help you drive your program development ideas, because you can kind of mold your program towards those criteria.
Awesome. And then what I have on my list, next one is low income census at county level, a criteria for award or more neighborhood localized.
Yeah, I'm going to pull what little hair I have out. I don't see that question.
It's above. But is low income census at county level a criteria or more neighborhood localized?
Hi, all. Sorry to jump in here. This is Riley Wills from the Resource Conservation District of Tehama County. And that question, I think it also kind of lends itself to another question posed by the Fire Safe Council of Sonoma about the honor system or self-certification for low income, kind of developing the criteria for what low income actually means, both geographically and then also how we determine or what to what level of proof is required that someone is actually low income. Obviously, it's variable spot to spot, but if there is anything in place right now for certifying that, or if it's just kind of that honor system idea.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be a certain level, excuse me, a certain level of the honor system. But as you're developing your applications, if you're going to serve low-income communities, I think there should be at least some type of rationale or explanation of how you determined which communities you're going to work in that are low income. So if you say we're going to work in these particular areas and they have a high percentage of low income based on census data or local California Department of Finance data or whatever, that's where I would lean towards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. And obviously there's other criteria. I mean, somebody can have all the money in the world, but are they inundated with vegetation right around their house, and is it very time sensitive, and are they maybe elderly and not physically capable to either handle the logistics of getting that work done on their property or doing it themselves? A lot of other kind of considerations there for sure.
Right. And that's the benefit of having multiple vulnerable populations. So low income, disabled, elderly, disadvantaged, you can go in any number of directions.
Of course.
Yeah, appreciate that.
No problem.
Sarah, what else you got for me?
Yeah, as I say, let's see. Yeah, it looks like Becky answered also the next one. You say countywide, can we collaborate with other fire safe councils? So for Berkeley to work with Oakland, and Becky said, yes, collaboration is encouraged.
Yeah, collaboration is definitely encouraged because we know that, not every county has a countywide organization. So we do encourage collaboration to partner up with, say, multiple eligible organizations to service a larger geographic area. Again, because we're thinking of making larger grant awards with this particular project, we want to have grantees that can service just larger areas, larger areas. So yeah, if you are not currently a countywide, quote unquote, countywide organization, yeah, team up with some others to expand that geographic scope.
Awesome, cool. So the next one we got is, do we have to have locations identified at time of application? Last, are there any letters of support or commitment from agencies needed? If so, how many? So those are two questions there.
Yeah, so letters of support, letters of commitment, we're not requiring them, but we always encourage them. It's nice to see. It's nice to see when there's support from outside agencies or your organizations you're going to collaborate with. We'd like to see that type of support documented. You don't need to identify the individual or specific properties that you're going to treat, but it would be helpful, and you'll need to provide a project map identifying which areas in general you're going to work in. So again, high and very high fire hazard severity zones. It'll be helpful to see a map, but again, you don't need to, because obviously you don't know which properties you're going to treat, but just a general area is good.
Perfect. Cool.
Sorry to jump back in. This is Riley again, but I just wondered, I lead a coalition of other RCDs under a Department of Conservation block grant. So we've developed this collaborative group that covers the region of the Northern Sacramento Valley. And I know that this is kind of a county specific boundary that you guys are putting on this grant in particular, but there are some areas that are kind of a blurred line between northern and southern boundaries of these counties as far as what work can be done. And then capacity wise, we just have the field staff and equipment to do this work in-house. And I wondered how flexible that is as far as if we maximize kind of our ability within Tehama County to be able to reach a little further north into Shasta or a little further south into Glenn counties and perform this same work if the opportunity presents itself, or is there kind of a strict don't cross the polygon line rule?
Okay, you have stumped the band.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That is, you know what? Gosh, we can have meetings endlessly and come up with all different ideas. That is not a question that we thought about. I'm gonna have to get back to you.
Yeah, no problem. I know. I mean, we've run a couple of. I mean, we're still running what we call Tinder Smart Tehama, which is the same idea that CAL FIRE funded initially a few years ago, and we've been kind of building momentum, obviously within Tehama County. But as much as we can, even in the outreach and education realm, reach out regionally, utilizing these other RCDs as partners, even though they might not specifically apply for this grant, but to be able to have the opportunity to do some work in those areas as well, being a regional effort. And I think that it just kind of piqued my interest when you say kind of maximizing the scope and scale of work to reach as far as we can to get as much of this important work done as possible.
Yeah, no, and that's a good idea. And darn it, I wish we had thought of that. Anyway, well, no, we'll put our thinking caps on and we'll come up with something.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, put a note there. Yeah, follow up. Okay. Let me see here. So can this grant money, be used on U.S. Forest Service land?
Oh. I will look into that, but my first reaction is to say no.
Okay. Look up. Okay, perfect. Next question. Looks like I got answered. So yeah, collaboration, blah, blah, blah. Countywide. Yeah, so when you mean countywide, does this mean the whole county, or can we focus on a certain part of the county, say South Siskiyou County communities such as Weed, Mount Shasta, Dunsmuir, etc.? We got answers, and yes, it could. We encourage you to create a program that can be recreated throughout the county so as not to duplicate efforts. Perfect. Okay, and then next one from that looks like it is in the middle of being answered, but can grant funds financially support property owners performing the treatments on their property, or must grant funds cover the cost of contractors performing the treatments only?
Yeah, if you want to send me an email about that, we can talk about that offline. But no, we're not. We don't provide direct sub grants to the homeowners, but there might be an opportunity that we've seen elsewhere, like in a cost share basis. But go ahead and send me the email about that. We can talk offline.
Okie dokie, cool. I'm trying to handle all this question. They're just rolling in. Okay, so next one I got on my list is there any CEQA filing requirement required for this grant?
No, to my knowledge, no, because defensible space is exempt from CEQA. So you'd have to look into that yourself, but my understanding is that because CEQA is categorically exempt, that that will not be a consideration.
Okay.
What is the allowable administrative percentage? So it's a maximum of 12%. for your indirect. Unless you have like a federally negotiated rate that exceeds 12%. Again, in the applicant handbook, there are instructions about the indirect or administrative percentage. And if you have a higher rate than that, what type of documentation you need to provide to charge greater than 12%. Question, what about Army Corps land that we have responsibility for? Oh, well, I tell you, the band is getting stumped all over the place here. That is a good question. I will have to look into that.
I think we've got one more left from Nick.
Does the grant give incentives to reach out to a core program such as CCC or local community conservation corps to do the work? I don't know about incentives, but yeah, I'm not sure about incentives, but I mean, I imagine, is there a way to contract with them to perform the work? I'll be honest, I don't fully understand, how that relationship works. If you can contract with them or if you have to provide, Brooke, I see your hand is raised. Do you want to bail me out here?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know, Nick, I'm going to throw you out here. We've got Nick Johnson from the CCC on the line. He's the Emergency and Environmental Programs Manager for the CCC. Nick, do you have experience with these types of grants and working with different communities or counties?
I do, and I was just wondering because several grants that have been put out by the state have had language in them actually requiring folks to reach out to a conservation corps to see if they want to participate in the project. And that is factored into the scoring criteria. Whether or not the CCC or local corps agreed to do the work isn't necessarily an issue. It was just a kind of a checkbox that grant applicants reach out to the corps to see if they're interested in being a part of doing some of the work. And so I wasn't sure if this, and so that those grant programs were like Prop 68, Prop 1 had that language in there. And I wasn't sure if this one, since it's a CAL FIRE grant, had similar language in it or not. Just curious. But also putting in a plug for CCC. Yes, you can contract with us to do it if you do.
Thank you, Nick. Did that help answer the question? I didn't see who the question was from.
A little bit, and we have not, I have not seen that type of requirement or particular in this grant program. I can look into it further, but no, that that's not a requirement in this one.
And the question was for me.
Oh, it was from you, Nick. Yeah, let's see if we can talk later. I need to set up a meeting with you and Aaron and Bruce possibly anyway, so maybe we can include Dave in that conversation.
That was great. Thanks, Brooke.
Perfect. Thanks, Brooke. So just to be clear, SQL will not be required for fuels treatment. Well, for defensible space within 100 feet of a homeowner's structure. If you go outside of that, then yes, SQL probably will be triggered. But, oh, Ember beat me to it. Okay, Sarah, what else?
I think that's all I got, at least. I think we've gone to the end of the list.
All righty.
Yeah, I think you'll just be getting a lot of emails with more questions.
That's fine by me. Send me emails. Actually, emails help because then it allows me to more easily put together the frequently asked questions. So I like email, even though it fills up the inbox, but that's okay. That's what this program's all about.
Hey, Dave, can I jump back in and ask one more question, or we just gain some clarity real quick?
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Regarding the CEQA and kind of the environmental side of things, there was a prohibited cost slide that talked about removal of trees from private property that do not pose an imminent threat to public
Correct.
health and safety. I just wanted to be clear that we are, I mean, defensible space, like you said, 100 feet from the structure. Sometimes, obviously, there isn't, if we draw kind of a circle around the structure, it may go outside of that parcel for the homeowner and leak into another corporately owned parcel or whatever it is. But we're saying that as long as it's within that 100 feet, it's still considered defensible space. And obviously, if we've got the permission from the homeowner to perform this defensible space work, we would then require, for in this example, the permission from whoever owns that private property that has that hazardous vegetation to perform those fuel treatments as well, correct?
Correct.
So this being still defensible space and still within the 100 feet, so that removes the requirement for any CEQA, no matter what land it's on, who owns it, it's still considered defensible space. It doesn't change the basic guidelines here.
That is my understanding, but I will confirm that.
Because I've got 1,000 ideas with different neighborhoods, and obviously having experience in this type of program, I just want to make sure that, because I mean, I love it. The fewer environmental, I mean, reasonably, the fewer environmental requirements that we have to abide by, the better in this type of work. But I just want to make sure that we're all clear.
Yeah, no, I like that question. And let me, my initial reaction would be to say, yeah, that's good. But let me just follow up just to be sure.
Sure, no problem.
I'd rather be safe than sorry, because I have this habit of shooting first and asking questions later, and boy, that gets me in trouble sometimes.
I certainly empathize with you there.
Okay. Well, Sarah?
Let me see here. CEQA, yes, Amber was saying CEQA could be triggered if it falls outside of the 100-foot guidelines of PRC 4291. Roberta had said, or an environmentally sensitive area. And then Bene had asked, what about people who might sue?
I'm really not sure how to answer that, I'll be honest. Send me an email about any concerns to that effect, and I'll think about it.
Well, I think that was the last one, unless anyone else has any questions
Yeah.
in the chat or ask. Oh, got another one. Oh, okay. He said that they've had that problem, unfortunately.
Oof. Okay, yeah, send me an email and let's talk offline about that.
Looks like, yeah, Roberta just threw in the CEQA handbook. Thank you.
Okay. Well, with that, let's wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Appreciate all the questions and the feedback. Again, always feel free to send me an email, and we will put together the frequently asked questions as soon as possible, and we will let you know once this recording is online, if for whatever reason you'd like to watch it again. And we'll just go from there. So June 15th, don't miss the deadline. Get started now, create your Zoom Grants account, start working with your partners, and good luck to you all.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.